The morning sky over Seoul burned orange as three massive ships descended through Earth's atmosphere. They moved slowly like floating mountains, casting shadows that covered entire city blocks. People stopped in the streets, pointing up at the alien vessels with their phones raised high. Commander Han Sol Kim watched from his office window on the 40th floor. The ships were beautiful in their own way, all smooth curves and gleaming metal. But Han Sol had seen ships like these before. Crashed ones. Broken ones. Ships his team had been studying for 30 years. His phone buzzed. "Sir, they're requesting a meeting with world leaders," said his assistant. "Of course they are," Han Sol muttered. He had been waiting for this day since he was a young engineer. The day when Earth's visitors would finally make themselves known to the world. The largest ship landed in a field outside the United Nations building in New York. Its landing created a crater 20 meters deep, but the ship hovered just above the ground on some kind of energy field. Ramps extended from its sides and figures began walking down. They looked almost human, but not quite. The Volari were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to glow. They wore flowing robes that changed color as they moved. Behind them came the Keth, shorter but built like warriors, covered in dark armor with red markings. Last were the Nexans, gray-skinned beings with too many arms and heads that tilted at odd angles. World leaders gathered in the UN Assembly Hall. Presidents, prime ministers, and generals filled the seats. The media called it the most important day in human history. Han Sol sat in the back, wearing a simple suit with no name tag. Nobody knew who he was, and that was exactly how he wanted it. The Volari ambassador stepped forward. Her voice was musical but cold. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Veltara of the Galactic Council. We have come to welcome you into the greater galaxy." The room buzzed with excitement. First contact with aliens, peace between worlds, a new age for humanity. Han Sol just smiled quietly to himself. "Your world is young," Veltara continued. "Your technology is quaint. We see you still use chemical rockets to barely leave your planet's surface. Your computers are large and slow. Your weapons are crude metal projectiles. But do not worry. The Galactic Council protects all developing worlds." The Keth commander stepped forward, his armor clanking. "I am War Chief Kexmore. We have observed your military. Your armies fight with vehicles that burn fuel and weapons that fire bullets. Very primitive. But we respect your warrior spirit." Han Sol's smile grew wider. If only they knew. The Nexan bureaucrat shuffled forward on 6 legs. "I am Administrative Overseer Nex Quiline. We have prepared standard development contracts for your world. In exchange for our protection and basic technology, we require access to 60% of your planet's resources. This includes metals, energy sources, and biological materials." The room went quiet. 60%. That was more than half of everything Earth had. "What kind of protection do we need?" asked the Secretary General. "The galaxy is dangerous," Veltara said with fake concern. "There are pirates who raid primitive worlds, raiders who take entire populations as slaves. Without our protection, your people would not survive their first encounter with real galactic threats." "And if we refuse?" asked the American president. Kexmore's laugh was harsh. "You cannot refuse. Your tiny rockets cannot even reach your own moon reliably. You have no weapons that could damage our ships. You are children playing with toys while adults discuss important matters." Han Sol watched the aliens carefully. They were following the exact same script his team had found in the crashed ships. The same words, the same threats, the same false kindness. These beings had done this before, to hundreds of worlds. "We need time to discuss this among our people," said the Secretary General. "Of course," Velterra said. "Take your time. We understand that primitive cultures need longer to make decisions. We will wait 1 week. But understand that our patience has limits." The aliens left the assembly hall, their footsteps echoing. World leaders immediately began arguing. Some wanted to accept the deal, others wanted to fight. Most were just scared. Han Sol slipped out quietly and took a taxi to the airport. His phone rang as soon as he sat down. "How did it go?" asked Dr. Eugene Park from the other end. "Exactly as we predicted," Han Sol replied. "Same threats, same timeline, same arrogance. They think we're helpless." "Good. That gives us the advantage. How long do we have?" 1 week before they expect an answer. But knowing these species, they'll probably get impatient after 5 days. The Leviathan will be ready in 4 days. So Min finished the last weapon. "Systems yesterday. Admiral Lee has all teams standing by." Han Sol looked out the taxi window at the alien ship floating over the city. People were still gathering around it, taking pictures, holding signs saying, "Welcome to Earth" in dozens of languages. They had no idea what was really happening. "What about the others?" he asked. "The Keth have 15 ships in orbit, just out of sight behind the moon. The Nexans have a supply fleet waiting at the edge of the solar system. The Valari brought their usual diplomatic escort, but sensors show they have weapons that could level entire cities. Standard invasion force disguised as a diplomatic mission. These guys really don't change their methods." Han Sol's taxi pulled up to a small airfield outside the city. His private jet was waiting, engines already running. As he boarded, he looked back at the alien ships one more time. For 30 years, his team had been preparing for this day. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They had solved problems that the aliens thought were impossible. They had built weapons and ships that made the Galactic Council's fleet look like children's toys. But the aliens didn't know any of that. They saw humans as primitive because that's what they wanted to see. They looked at Earth's public technology and assumed that was all humanity had. They never looked deeper. They never imagined that a primitive species might be hiding something. The jet took off into the night sky, flying toward the Pacific Ocean. Below the waves, in facilities that didn't officially exist, teams of engineers and scientists were making final preparations. Admiral Tae-Ho Lee was positioning forces that had been training in secret for decades. Captain Dongwoo Nam was running last checks on ships that could travel faster than light. Ambassador Ji-hee Yoon was preparing for the most important performance of her life. Tomorrow, she would meet with the aliens again. She would act scared and confused. She would beg for more time. She would make them believe that humanity was exactly as helpless as they thought, and while the aliens waited impatiently for Earth's surrender, humanity would prepare to show them just how wrong they were. Han Sol looked out at the stars as his jet flew through the darkness. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn that humans were anything but primitive. 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Eugene Park stood in front of the most advanced piece of technology ever created by human hands. The quantum fold drive hummed with barely contained energy, its crystalline core pulsing with light that seemed to bend space around it. "Final calibration complete," she announced to her team. "We're ready for full-scale testing." The underwater facility stretched for miles in every direction, carved out of the ocean floor and hidden from every satellite and sensor on Earth's surface. Automated submarines had been building this place for 25 years, using materials that officially didn't exist, and following blueprints that were classified beyond top secret. Eugen had been 12 years old when the first alien probe crashed in the Siberian wilderness. While the world's governments argued about what to do with it, a small group of scientists had quietly begun studying every piece of alien technology they could find. Most of it was broken, but it was enough to start learning. The quantum fold. Drive was humanity's greatest breakthrough. While aliens used predictable wormhole networks that took hours or days to travel between stars, humans had learned to fold space itself. A ship with this drive could appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. "Dr. Park, we have a message from Commander Kim," said her assistant, Hyun-woo. "The aliens made contact. We have 1 week." Eugen nodded. "Then it's time to wake up the Leviathan." She walked through a reinforced tunnel that stretched for 2 kilometers underground. Emergency lights flickered on as she passed, illuminating walls covered with equations and blueprints. This was her life's work, hidden from the world above. The tunnel opened into a cavern so massive that its far walls disappeared into darkness. And floating in the center, supported by gravitational fields that defied every known law of physics, was the TSS Leviathan. The ship was enormous. 15 kilometers from nose to tail, 4 kilometers at its widest point, with weapon turrets that could crack moons and armor that could withstand the explosion of a small sun. It looked like a great metal whale, all smooth curves and flowing lines, but with teeth. Engineer So-Min Choi was waiting at the ship's main entrance, tablet in hand. "Final systems check completed an hour ago," she reported. "All weapons online, all defensive systems active, quantum fold drive ready for immediate deployment." So-Min had spent her entire career building this ship. She had started as a young engineer working on theoretical spacecraft designs, and had gradually been brought into the project as it became clear that she was brilliant, trustworthy, and absolutely dedicated to protecting Earth. "What about the crew?" Eugen asked. "Captain Nam finished his final training simulation yesterday. His team knows every system on this ship better than the engineers who built it. Admiral Lee has been coordinating with our other assets worldwide." They walked up the ramp into the EA. Leviathan's interior. The corridors were wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side, with walls that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Everything was clean, efficient, and ready for war. The bridge was a work of art. Holographic displays showed real-time data from sensors that could detect objects moving faster than light. Weapon controls could target multiple enemies across several star systems simultaneously. The navigation system had already mapped every alien outpost within 1,000 light-years of Earth. Captain Dong-Woo Nam was running final checks on the ship's combat systems. He was young for a starship captain, only 35, but he had been training for this job since he was 18. He knew how to fight aliens because he had been studying their tactics for nearly 2 decades. "Captain," Eugen said, "are we ready?" "We've been ready for years, Doctor. The question is whether the aliens are ready for us." On the main screen, they could see feeds from the surface. The alien ships were still floating over major cities, their crews probably laughing about how primitive humans were. If only they knew that humanity had been monitoring their communications, tracking their movements, and analyzing their weaknesses for 3 decades. "Dr. Park, incoming message from Admiral Lee," announced the communications officer. Admiral Tae-ho. Lee appeared on screen speaking from his command center in an abandoned mine shaft in Montana. Behind him, Eugen could see dozens of officers coordinating with resistance cells around the world. "Status report, Doctor," the Admiral said. "The Leviathan is fully operational. The quantum fold drive is stable. All weapon systems are online. We can launch on your command. Excellent. What about our other assets? So-Min stepped forward. The Titan-class ships are ready in facilities under the Arctic ice. The Dragon-class fighters are prepared for launch from bases in the Australian outback. Our orbital platforms have been in position for 6 months, disguised as space debris. The Admiral smiled grimly. And the aliens still have no idea? They scanned our planet when they arrived, Yujin replied. Their sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect. Chemical rockets, primitive computers, basic nuclear weapons. They saw a civilization that barely managed to reach its own moon. Perfect. Ambassador Yoon is meeting with them again tomorrow. She'll continue playing the role of a confused, frightened human leader. Meanwhile, we'll be getting into position. The Bow. Screen switched to show feeds from around the world. In underground facilities that looked like ancient mines, humanity's true military was awakening. Ships that could fight entire fleets were powering up their engines. Weapons that could destroy planets were coming online. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment were taking their positions. Yujin walked to the observation deck and looked out at the ocean floor. Schools of fish swam past the transparent aluminum windows, completely unaware that humanity's most advanced warship was floating just a few meters away. She thought about the aliens above, so confident in their superiority. They had made the same mistake that every galactic empire made when they encountered a new world. They looked at the surface and assumed they understood everything. They didn't know about the crashed alien ships that humanity had been studying since the 1950s. They didn't know about the secret projects that had been running for decades. They didn't know that Earth's brightest scientists had been working together in facilities that officially didn't exist. Most importantly, they didn't know that humans were really good at learning from their enemies. Every alien technology had been reverse-engineered and improved. Every alien weakness had been cataloged and exploited. Every alien tactic had been studied and countered. The Galactic Council thought they were dealing with primitives, but they were actually facing an enemy that knew them better than they knew themselves. Dr. Park, we're receiving the final authorization codes, announced Hyun-woo. Yujin nodded. In 72 hours, the aliens would expect humanity's surrender. Instead, they would get the surprise of their lives. The Leviathan's engines began their startup sequence, filling the cavern with a deep, powerful hum. After 30 years of preparation, humanity was finally ready to show the galaxy what humans could do when they put their minds to it. The aliens called them primitive. Soon, they would learn just how wrong they were. The 2 days passed slowly. Around the world, people watched the scarred moon and waited for their governments to decide humanity's fate. Most expected surrender. Some prepared to fight with whatever weapons they had. None of them knew that their real military had been waiting 30 years for this moment. Ambassador Ji Hye-yoon stood once again in the UN Assembly Hall, but this time she wasn't alone. Representatives from every major nation sat behind her, all wearing the same expression of defeat and resignation that she had practiced in front of her mirror. The alien delegation looked pleased as they took their positions. Veltara's robes shimmered with satisfaction. Kexmore's armor gleamed as if polished for a victory celebration. The Nexan bureaucrat had already prepared the surrender documents on his portable computer. "Well, Ambassador Yoon?" Veltara asked. "Has your primitive world finally accepted reality?" Ji Hai took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. She had to sell the performance of her lifetime. We have a proposal," she said carefully. "Our people are afraid. They don't want to surrender without seeing proof that You can protect us from other galactic threats. Kexmore laughed harshly. You want proof? We put a crater in your moon. Yes, but that just shows you can destroy things. We need to see that you can defend us. Could you demonstrate your defensive capabilities? Maybe show us how your ships would protect Earth from an attack? The aliens looked confused. This wasn't how primitive worlds usually behaved. Normally, they just surrendered immediately after the demonstration. What kind of demonstration? Asked. The Nexan Overseer. Maybe you could show us how your fleet would respond to an enemy attack? We have some old space stations near Neptune that you could use as targets. Show us how your ships fight together to defend a world. Veltara considered this request. It was unusual, but not unreasonable. A primitive world might want to see their protectors in action before agreeing to pay tribute for the next 1,000 years. Very well, she said finally. We will conduct a defensive exercise near your outer planet. This will demonstrate why the Galactic Council's protection is worth any price. Thank you, Jihai said, bowing her head in apparent relief. When can we see this demonstration? In 1 hour, Kexmore declared. Our fleet will show you how real warriors fight. Then there will be no more delays. As the aliens left to prepare their demonstration, Jihai quietly activated a small device hidden in her sleeve. It sent a single coded signal to receivers around the world. The signal meant, it's time. 3 kilometers under the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Eugene Park watched her quantum fold drive reach full power. The crystalline core blazed with light that seemed to twist space around it. After 30 years of theoretical work and practical engineering, her masterpiece was finally ready. All systems green, she announced. Initiating fold sequence. The TSS Leviathan began to phase out of normal space. Reality bent around the massive ship as it prepared to travel 15 billion kilometers in the blink of an eye. In the Arctic, engineer So-Min Choi watched her own creations come online. The Titan-class ships were smaller than the Leviathan, but still massive by any galactic standard. Each one could fight an entire alien fleet and win. Titan squadron ready for fold jump, she reported. All ships show green across the board. Around the world, humanity's hidden military was awakening. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids powered up their targeting systems. Fighter squadrons that had been training in secret for decades prepared for their first real combat. Soldiers, who had studied alien tactics their entire lives, took their positions. Near Neptune, the Keth fleet formed up in what they considered a perfect defensive formation. 15 warships arranged in a sphere, their sensors scanning for imaginary enemies, their weapons ready to destroy any threat. War Chief Kexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident that this demonstration would terrify the primitive humans into immediate surrender. His ships were the finest in the galaxy, his warriors the most experienced. No force in known space could challenge the might of the Keth fleet. That confidence lasted exactly 37 minutes. Space near Neptune suddenly tore open like fabric being ripped apart. Reality twisted, light bent at impossible angles, and something vast began to emerge from the quantum fold. The TSS Leviathan materialized directly in front of the Keth fleet, its 15-kilometer length dwarfing even their largest dreadnought. Weapon ports that could crack moons opened along its hull. Shield generators that could withstand supernovas hummed to life. On the bridge of his flagship, Kexmore stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. The energy signature from the human ship was impossible. Nothing that large should be able to move that fast, or generate that much power, or even exist without collapsing under its own gravity. What is that thing? He demanded. His sensor officer's voice shook as he replied. Sir, it's reading as 15 kilometers long, 4 kilometers wide, mass approximately... Sir, this can't be right. Tell me. It masses more than our entire fleet combined. And the power readings. It's generating enough energy to light up a star. Before Kexmore could respond, space tore open again. And again. And again. More ships emerged from quantum folds, each one massive and gleaming with advanced technology. The Titan squadron spread, out in perfect formation, their hulls bristling with weapons that made Keth military hardware look like primitive clubs. Captain Dongwu Nam opened communications from the Leviathan's bridge. His voice was calm and professional as it reached every alien ship in the system. Greetings, Galactic Council Fleet. I am Captain Nam of the Terran Space Navy. We understand you requested a demonstration of defensive capabilities. On his flagship, Kexmore could barely find his voice. Terran Space Navy? You primitives don't have a space navy. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding about human technological capabilities, Captain Nam replied politely. Allow us to clarify. The Leviathan's main engines fired, and the massive ship accelerated to speeds that should have been impossible for something so large. It moved around the alien formation like a dancer, demonstrating maneuvers that defied every known law of physics. The human fighters launched next, Dragon-class ships that phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind alien vessels before vanishing again. They moved like ghosts, like dreams, like nightmares come to life. Admiral Taeho Lee's voice joined the communication from his command ship. War Chief Kexmore, we believe you wanted to demonstrate defensive tactics. Please show us how your fleet responds to a hostile force. This is impossible, Kexmore shouted. Your species doesn't have this technology. Our scouts reported chemical rockets and primitive computers. Your scouts saw what we wanted them to see, Admiral Lee replied calmly. Now, shall we begin the exercise? The human fleet spread out around the aliens like a net closing on fish. Every move was precise, coordinated, perfect. These weren't primitive warriors stumbling around in crude ships. These were apex predators who had been training for this exact moment for decades. On Earth, Ambassador Yoon watched the live feed from Neptune with satisfaction. The alien delegates in the UN Assembly Hall sat in stunned silence as their supposedly invincible fleet found itself completely surrounded by ships that shouldn't exist. As you can see, she said sweetly, we've been having some discussions about your protection offer. We think there may have been some misunderstandings about the terms. Veltara's glowing eyes were wide with shock. This is not possible. Primitive. Worlds do not have quantum fold technology. They do not have ships of this size. They do not have weapons that can threaten council fleets. Well, Jihai replied, I suppose that depends on your definition of primitive. In space near Neptune, the human fleet completed its encirclement. 15 alien ships hung motionless in the center of a formation that could have destroyed entire star systems. Commander Han Sol Kim's voice joined the communication from his position aboard the Leviathan. Galactic Council Fleet, this concludes our defensive demonstration. We trust it has been educational. The aliens said nothing. They were too stunned to speak. Humanity had been underestimated. The galaxy was about to learn that humans were anything but primitive. The silence in space lasted for nearly 10 minutes. 15 alien warships hung motionless in the center of a formation that demonstrated just how badly the Galactic Council had misunderstood humanity. War Chief Kexmore was the first to break the silence. His voice came across the communication channels filled with rage and disbelief. "This is some kind of trick. These ships are illusions. No primitive species has quantum fold technology." Captain Dongwu Nam smiled on the bridge of the Leviathan. "Would you like us to prove these ships are real, War Chief?" Before Kexmore could answer, the Leviathan's main guns swiveled toward a large asteroid floating nearby. The weapon fired. Once, a beam of energy that lasted less than a second. The asteroid, roughly the size of Manhattan, simply vanished. Not destroyed, not broken apart. Completely erased from existence. "Our main weapons use controlled antimatter annihilation," Captain Nam explained pleasantly. "Each turret can generate enough energy to crack a small moon. The Leviathan has 47 such turrets. The alien sensors confirmed what their eyes couldn't believe. The asteroid was gone. The energy readings from the human ship were beyond anything in their databases. This wasn't primitive technology. This was more advanced than anything the Galactic Council possessed." "Impossible," whispered the Nexan overseer from his position in the UN Assembly Hall. "No species develops this level of technology without going through standard galactic development phases. It takes thousands of years to achieve quantum fold capability." Ambassador Ji Hai-Yun turned to face the alien delegates with a smile that was no longer frightened or desperate. "Perhaps your standard development models need updating." In space, Admiral Tae-Ho Lee was coordinating a demonstration that would change galactic politics forever. "Dr. Park, show them how our drives work." From her position deep beneath the Pacific, Yujin activated the Leviathan's quantum fold system. Space twisted around the massive ship as it vanished from Neptune's orbit and appeared instantly near Mars, then Venus, then back to Neptune. The ship was teleporting across the solar system like it weighed nothing. "Standard wormhole travel takes hours or days to cross these distances," Admiral Lee explained to the stunned alien fleet. "Our quantum fold drives allow instantaneous travel across any distance. We can be anywhere in the galaxy before you finish reading this sentence." Kexmore's warrior training finally overcame his shock. If these humans had superior technology, then he would do what Keth had always done. Challenge them to single combat and prove that superior weapons meant nothing without superior warriors. "You have impressive toys," he snarled, "but battles are won by warriors, not machines. I challenge your strongest fighter to single combat. When I defeat them, your illusion of superiority will be broken." Captain Nam looked at Admiral Lee through their private communication channel. "Sir, permission to accept the challenge?" "Granted, Captain. Show them what human training can accomplish." "With pleasure, sir." The Leviathan's main hangar opened, and a single Dragon-class fighter emerged. It was small compared to the massive ships around it, but it moved with deadly grace. Captain Nam had been training in this exact type of combat for 20 years. Kexmore's personal fighter launched from the Keth flagship. It was twice the size of the human ship, heavily armored, and armed with weapons that had won 1,000 battles across the galaxy. "Prepare to learn why the Keth are feared throughout known space, human," Kexmore growled. The two ships circled each other like ancient gladiators. Then Kexmore attacked with all the fury and skill that had made him the greatest warrior in the Keth fleet. The battle lasted exactly 43 seconds. Captain Nam's fighter didn't just outmaneuver the alien ship, it seemed to dance around it. The Dragon-class fighter phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind Kexmore's ship, beside it, above it, in positions that should have been impossible. Every time Kexmore tried to target the human fighter, it vanished and reappeared somewhere else. Every time he fired his weapons, they hit empty space. The human ship moved like it was reading his mind, anticipating his every move before he made it. Finally, Captain Nam's fighter appeared directly in front of Kexmore's ship and fired. Once. The beam didn't destroy the alien fighter. It surgically disabled every weapon and engine system without harming the pilot. Kexmore's ship drifted helplessly in space, completely defeated. "Your fighter is disabled but intact," Captain Nam announced. "We've found that destroying enemy pilots is often counterproductive to establishing peaceful relations." The Keth war chief sat in his cockpit, staring at his dead controls. He was the greatest warrior in his species' history, flying the most advanced fighter in the galactic fleet, and a human had defeated him without breaking a sweat. "How?" he asked quietly. 20 years of training," Captain Nam replied. "We've been studying your combat techniques since we recovered your first crashed ship. We know how you fight because we've been watching you fight. You never studied us because you thought we weren't worth studying." On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Lee addressed the entire alien fleet. "War Chief Kexmore has demonstrated considerable skill and courage. However, this engagement illustrates a fundamental problem with the Galactic Council's approach to new species." "What problem?" asked Veltara, her musical voice now strained with fear. "You assume that any species you haven't encountered before must be primitive. You never consider that they might be advanced in ways you don't recognize. You see what you expect to see, not what's actually there." Engineer So-Min Choi's voice joined the communication from her Titan-class command ship. "For 30 years, your species have been crashing ships on our planet. We recovered the wreckage, studied your technology, learned your languages, and monitored your communications. We know everything about you. You know nothing about us." The aliens were beginning to understand just how completely they had been outmaneuvered. This wasn't a primitive species that had somehow acquired advanced technology. This was an advanced species that had been hiding its capabilities while studying its potential enemies. "What do you want?" asked the Nexan overseer. Ambassador Yoon smiled. "That's a very good question. What do we want?" She activated a holographic display that showed the current galactic political map. Hundreds of worlds marked in different colors, representing different levels of control by the Galactic Council. Most were marked in red, conquered worlds, paying tribute to their alien overlords. "We want to discuss some changes to the way the galaxy is run," Jihai said calmly. "Starting with this protection racket you've been operating." "Protection racket?" Veltara protested. "We provide legitimate security services to developing worlds. By threatening to destroy them if they don't pay tribute, by taking 60% of their resources, by keeping them technologically dependent on you." Admiral Lee's voice was cold. "We have another word for that kind of protection." Captain Nam's fighter returned to the Leviathan's hangar after retrieving Kexmore's disabled ship. The alien warrior would be treated with respect and returned safely to his fleet. But the message was clear. Humanity could have destroyed him, easily, if they had chosen to. "So what happens now?" asked Kexmore, as human technicians helped him out of his cockpit. Captain Nam removed his flight helmet, revealing a young face that looked almost friendly. "Now we talk. We figure out how to make the galaxy a better place for everyone, not just the species with the biggest fleets." The alien war chief stared at him. "You defeated me in single combat. By Keth law, you have the right to claim my life, my ship, my rank, everything I own." "We don't want your life or your ship," Nam replied. "We want to be friends. We want to explore the galaxy together, learn from each other, build something better than what the Council has created." For the first time in his military career, Kexmore didn't know what to say. In space around Neptune, two fleets faced each other, one representing the old way of doing things, the other representing something entirely new. The aliens had come to Earth expecting to add another primitive world to their empire. Instead, they had discovered that the primitives were more advanced than they were. The Galactic Council fleet tried to leave the solar system 3 hours after the demonstration at Neptune. They discovered that they couldn't. "Sir, hyperspace drives are not responding," reported the navigation officer aboard the Valari flagship. "All our jump engines show full power, but we cannot initiate hyperspace travel." Ambassador Veltara felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries of galactic diplomacy: genuine fear. "Explain this malfunction." "It's not a malfunction." Captain Nam's voice came over the communication channel. "We're generating a hyperspace disruption field around your fleet. Your ships cannot leave this system until we allow it." Admiral Lee's command ship moved into position alongside the alien vessels. "We apologize for the inconvenience, but we need to have a longer conversation about galactic politics. Your fleet was planning to return to Council space and report that Earth had been conquered, correct?" The Nexan overseer answered reluctantly. "Standard protocol requires immediate notification of successful planetary annexation." "The problem is that Earth hasn't been conquered," said Ambassador Yoon from her position at the UN. "In fact, we'd like to discuss some changes to the way the Galactic Council operates." "You cannot hold our fleet hostage," Veltara protested. "This is an act of war against the Council." "Actually," said Dr. Eugene Park, her voice joining the conversation from her underwater facility, "this is a negotiation. A rather one-sided negotiation, admittedly, but we prefer to think of it as diplomacy backed by overwhelming technological superiority." Engineer So-Min Choi activated another holographic display that showed the positions of ships throughout the local stellar region. "While you've been focused on our demonstration here at Neptune, our fleet has been taking positions throughout Council space." The display showed dozens of massive human ships appearing at strategic locations across the galaxy. Each one had used quantum fold drives to appear instantly at key Council worlds, orbital stations, and military outposts. "This is impossible," whispered Kexmore. "No species has the resources to build a fleet this large in secret." "You'd be surprised what humans can accomplish when they work together," Commander Han Sol Kim replied. "We've had 30 years to prepare for this day. 30 years to study your technology, understand your tactics, and build ships that could change the balance of power in the galaxy." The aliens were beginning to realize that humanity hadn't just built a few advanced ships. They had built an entire space navy that was already in position to challenge the Council's control over hundreds of worlds. "What do you want?" asked Veltara, her musical voice now barely above a whisper. "We want to end the protection racket," Admiral Lee stated bluntly. "No more forcing developing worlds to surrender 60% of their resources. No more keeping species technologically dependent. No more conquest disguised as diplomacy." "The Council maintains order in the galaxy," protested the Nexan overseer. "Without our guidance, primitive worlds would destroy themselves or be conquered by pirates and raiders." "Funny thing about that," said Captain Nam. "We've been monitoring Council space for the past 5 years. We've identified 17 species that are being suppressed by your protection agreements. Worlds that developed their own advanced technology but were forced to abandon it in exchange for Council protection." Dr. Park activated another display showing detailed intelligence reports on Council operations. "We've also tracked the pirates and raiders you claim to protect worlds from. Interesting discovery. Most of them are using Council weapons and..." following Council military tactics, almost like they're working for you. The silence from the alien fleet was deafening. You've been creating the threats you claim to protect people from, Admiral Lee continued. Attack a world with pirates, then offer protection in exchange for tribute. It's an old strategy, but effective. Ambassador Yoon stood up in the UN Assembly Hall, no longer pretending to be frightened or overwhelmed. So here's what's going to happen. The Galactic Council is going to become the Galactic Federation. Instead of conquered worlds paying tribute, we're going to have equal member species working together. And if we refuse? Asked Kexmore engineer Somin showed them another display. This one showed energy readings from the human fleet positioned around Council worlds. Each ship was generating enough power to sterilize an entire planet. We'd prefer not to use force, she said calmly. But we're prepared to if necessary. Every major Council world now has human ships in orbit. Every military outpost is being monitored. Every fleet base is within range of our weapons. You're threatening genocide, Veltara accused. No, said Admiral Lee. We're threatening to do to you exactly what you've been doing to other species. For centuries. The difference is that we're offering you a choice first. Captain Nam's voice took on a more conciliatory tone. We don't want to destroy anyone. We want to explore the galaxy, learn new things, make friends with other species. But we won't allow the Council to continue conquering worlds and oppressing people. The alien delegates looked at each other uncertainly. Everything they thought, they knew about galactic politics had been turned upside down in a single day. How do we know you won't become the same kind of oppressors once you have power? Asked Kexmore. Because we've seen what that kind of power does to civilizations, Commander Kim replied. We've studied the Council's history, watched how the original ideals of galactic cooperation turned into an empire based on fear and exploitation. We're not interested in ruling the galaxy. We're interested in fixing it. Dr. Park added, Besides, our entire fleet could disappear back to Earth in minutes if we needed to. Quantum fold technology makes it impossible for anyone to hold us in one place against our will. We don't need to rule the galaxy to protect ourselves. Ambassador Yoon walked closer to the alien delegates. Here's what we're proposing. The Council becomes a federation of equal members. No more tribute payments, no more technological suppression, no more conquest. Instead, we share knowledge, explore together, and build something better. And if we agree to this, Federation, asked the Nexon Overseer. Then we help you, said Engineer So-Min. Human technology could solve a lot of galactic problems. Our quantum fold drives could revolutionize transportation. Our energy systems could provide clean power to every world in known space. Our medical advances could extend lifespans for dozens of species. But if you refuse, Admiral Lee added, then we start liberating worlds one by one. Every species that wants out of the protection racket gets human support. Every world that wants technological independence gets human assistance. The Council Empire ends either way. The aliens realized they were facing an impossible choice. They could accept humanity's terms and transform the galaxy into something unprecedented, or they could fight a war against an enemy that had already demonstrated overwhelming superiority. War Chief Kexmore was the first to speak. The Keth respect. Strength above all else. You have proven your strength. If you can prove your wisdom as well, then perhaps this federation could work. Veltara nodded slowly. The Valari have always valued knowledge and discovery. If this federation truly promotes exploration and learning, then we could support it. The Nexan Overseer was quiet for a long time before responding. The administrative challenges of transforming the council into a federation would be significant, but not impossible. Ambassador Yoon smiled. Then let's get started. We have a galaxy to rebuild. In space around Neptune, two fleets that had been prepared for war began preparing for the most ambitious political transformation in galactic history. Humanity had revealed its hidden strength not to conquer the galaxy, but to liberate it. The primitives had become the liberators. The transformation of the Galactic Council into the Galactic Federation took exactly 6 months. It would have taken longer, but humans had a talent for making things happen quickly when they put their minds to it. The first liberated world was Kepler 442b, a planet that had been paying tribute to the Council for over 200 years. When the human fleet arrived in orbit, the local population thought they were facing another conquest. Instead, Admiral Taeho Lee broadcast a simple message. People of Kepler 442b, you are now free. The tribute payments end today. The technological restrictions are lifted immediately. Welcome to the Galactic Federation. The response was chaos, then celebration, then determination to help liberate other worlds. Ambassador Ji Hae-yoon had established the Federation Council on a space station that humans built in neutral space. The station was massive, designed to accommodate representatives from hundreds of different species. It had artificial gravity that could be adjusted for different biological needs, atmospheric systems that could provide any type of air, and communication systems that could translate between thousands of languages instantly. The first Federation Council meeting was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Federation recognizes the sovereignty of all member worlds. Ambassador Yoon announced to the assembled delegates. No world will be forced to surrender resources to support other worlds. No species will be kept technologically dependent. No civilization will be conquered for their own protection. War Chief Kexmore had been elected to represent the Keth people in the new government. The transformation had been difficult for a warrior culture, but they had adapted with surprising speed. The Keth pledge our military strength to defend Federation worlds from real threats, he announced. Not imaginary pirates created to justify conquest, but actual dangers that exist in the galaxy. Vel Tara spoke for the Valari delegation. Her people had embraced the Federation more enthusiastically than anyone expected. The Valari offer our knowledge of hyperspace navigation and quantum physics to all Federation members. We will establish research stations where any species can study advanced technology. The Nexan representative had the most complex job. The bureaucratic species was responsible for organizing the dissolution of the old tribute system and establishing new trade agreements between hundreds of worlds. The administrative transition is proceeding ahead of schedule, he reported. Tribute payments have ended on all former Council worlds. Independent trade agreements are being established based on mutual benefit rather than coercion. But the real changes were happening in the liberated worlds themselves. On Rigel 7th, a species called the Helix had been forced to abandon their advanced biotechnology in exchange for Council protection. Within weeks of liberation, they were growing organic spacecraft that could heal themselves from battle damage. The crystalline builders of Wolf 359 had been restricted to primitive construction techniques for centuries. When the restrictions were lifted, they began creating architectural marvels that defied gravity and seemed to be made of living light. The deep swimmers of Vega 2 had been prevented from developing their natural ability to manipulate quantum fields. Once free, they became some of the galaxy's most innovative engineers, creating technologies that merged seamlessly with biological systems. Every species has something unique to contribute, Dr. Eugene Park explained during a scientific conference on the Federation station. The Council's mistake was trying to force everyone to develop along the same technological paths. When you let civilizations explore their own strengths, amazing things happen. Captain Dongwu Nam was leading the first Federation exploration mission to the Andromeda Galaxy. The quantum fold technology had opened up possibilities that no one had imagined before. We're detecting signs of civilization in at least 40 star systems, he reported from his exploration ship. Some appear to be more advanced than anything we've encountered in the Milky Way. Others are just beginning to develop space travel. Rules of engagement? Asked Admiral Lee. No conquest, no intimidation, no protection rackets, Captain Nam replied. We make contact, offer friendship and trade, and respect their right to develop at their own pace. If they want to join the Yao Federation eventually, great. If not, that's their choice. The old council species were discovering that cooperation was more profitable than conquest. The Keth found that other species were eager to trade for their advanced metallurgy when it wasn't being imposed by force. The Valari's artistic achievements were celebrated throughout the galaxy now that they weren't being used to intimidate primitive worlds. Even the Nexans discovered that voluntary administrative services were more efficient than bureaucracy enforced at gunpoint. But not everyone was happy with the changes. The hegemony of Arcturus had been the Council's most oppressive client state, specializing in keeping other species technologically dependent. When the Federation liberated their tributary worlds, the hegemony declared war. They've mobilized a fleet of 300 ships, reported engineer So-Min Choi from her monitoring station. They're calling themselves the True Council and claiming that the Federation is a human plot to conquer the galaxy. Admiral Lee smiled grimly. 300 ships. How many do we have in the region? 12 human vessels and about 40 ships from liberated worlds that volunteered to help. 52 ships against 300. Almost seems unfair. For them, yes, sir, the Battle of Arcturus lasted 6 hours. It would have been shorter. But Admiral Lee wanted to give the hegemony ships multiple opportunities to surrender before destroying them. The human fleet used tactics that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. Ships that could appear anywhere instantly, weapons that could disable entire fleets without killing their crews, and defensive systems that made them essentially invulnerable to conventional attacks. But the real surprise was how well the liberated worlds fought alongside the humans. The Helix bioships could regenerate from any damage. The crystalline builders created defensive formations that bent space around them. The deep swimmers manipulated quantum fields to make enemy weapons miss their targets entirely. This is what happens when you let species develop their full potential, Commander Han Sol Kim observed as he watched the battle from the Leviathan's bridge. Every civilization has strengths that the Council never bothered to discover. When the battle ended, the surviving hegemony ships were faced with a choice: join the Federation as equals, or leave galactic civilization entirely. Most of them chose to join. 3 months later, Ambassador Yoon stood before the largest gathering of sapient beings in galactic history. Representatives from over 800 worlds had come to the Federation station to sign the new galactic charter. 6 months ago, the galaxy was controlled by fear, she said. Worlds lived in terror of pirates that were secretly funded by their supposed protectors. Species were kept primitive to make them easier to control. Entire civilizations were reduced to resource extraction operations for the benefit of their conquerors. The assembled delegates listened in silence. Many of them had lived under council rule their entire lives. Today, we begin something new. A federation based on cooperation instead of coercion. A galaxy where every species can develop their full potential. A civilization where strength is used to protect the weak, not exploit them. The signing ceremony took 14 hours. Every world, every species, every civilization had to formally agree to the new way of doing things. When it was finished, Ambassador Yoon looked out at the greatest alliance in galactic history and smiled. "The Council called us primitive," she said. "They thought we were just another world to be conquered and controlled. They never imagined that the primitives might have something to teach them about civilization." War Chief Kexmore stood up, his armor gleaming under the station's lights. "The Keith have a saying. The strongest warrior is the one who never has to fight. The humans have shown us that true strength comes from making enemies into friends." Veltara added her voice to the ceremony. "The Velari believe that knowledge belongs to everyone. The Federation will ensure that no species is ever again kept ignorant to make them easier to control." The Nexan representative spoke last. "The administrative systems of the Federation will serve all members equally. No world will be reduced to a tributary state. No species will be exploited for the benefit of others." As the ceremony concluded, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Former Council worlds were experiencing unprecedented prosperity. Scientific breakthroughs were happening daily as species shared knowledge freely for the first time in centuries. Exploration missions were discovering new worlds and new civilizations at an amazing rate. The primitives had not just defeated the Galactic Council, they had replaced it with something better. And this was just the beginning. 2 years after the formation of the Galactic Federation, Captain Dongwoo Nam stood on the bridge of the TSS New Horizon, watching something that would have been impossible under the old Council system. The ship was a joint construction project. The hull was built using Keth metallurgy techniques that made it nearly indestructible. The engines were based on human quantum fold technology, but improved by Velari theoretical physicists. The life support systems used helix biotechnology that could adapt to any species' needs. The navigation systems were designed by the deep swimmers, who had an intuitive understanding of quantum mechanics that surpassed even human scientists. "Captain, we're receiving signals from the Andromeda contact zone," reported his communications officer, a young crystalline builder whose body sparkled with inner light. On screen, the main display showed a star system in the Andromeda galaxy, 2.5 million light-years from Earth. 3 different alien civilizations had made contact there, and all of them were more advanced than anything the Milky Way had ever produced. "The Andromedans are requesting a formal meeting," the communications officer continued. "They want to discuss establishing diplomatic relations with the Federation." Nam smiled. When the old Galactic Council had made first contact with new species, it was always the same story. Show up with overwhelming force, demand tribute, threaten orbital bombardment if refused. The primitives were expected to surrender immediately or be destroyed. The Federation did things differently. "Send our response," Nam ordered. "We're honored by their interest in establishing diplomatic relations. We offer friendship, trade, and cultural exchange, but we respect their right to develop at their own pace and maintain their independence." The reply came back within hours. The Andromedans were confused but pleased. They had been expecting threats and demands. Instead, they were being offered partnership as equals. Back in the Milky Way, the transformation of galactic civilization was accelerating beyond anyone's expectations. Dr. Eugene Park had established research stations throughout Federation space, where scientists from hundreds of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The quantum-fold drive that had once been humanity's greatest secret was now being improved by alien physicists who brought completely different perspectives to the technology. "We're achieving breakthroughs every week," she reported during a Federation Council meeting. "The Helix bioengineers have figured out how to make quantum-fold drives that grow instead of being built. The crystalline builders are creating navigation systems that exist partially in hyperspace. The deep swimmers have developed fold drives that work by manipulating probability rather than space-time." Engineer So Min Choi had been promoted to Federation Fleet Commander, overseeing the construction of ships that represented the combined knowledge of dozens of civilizations. The new vessels were works of art as much as they were tools of exploration. "The Harmony-class exploration ships are ready for their first missions," she announced. "Each one carries representatives from at least 20 different species. They're not just exploring new star systems, they're demonstrating what's possible when civilizations work together." War Chief Kex Moore had transformed his people's military traditions into something entirely new. The Keth were still warriors, but now they fought to protect rather than conquer. "The Federation Defense Force has eliminated the last of the pirate fleets," he reported with satisfaction. "Turns out that pirates have trouble operating when their former council sponsors are no longer funding them, and their target worlds are protected by quantum-fold response fleets." But the real changes were happening on individual worlds throughout the galaxy. Rigel 7th had become a center for biological research where species from across the galaxy came to study life in all its forms. The Helix had shared their biotechnology freely, leading to medical breakthroughs that extended lifespans and eliminated diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia. Wolf 359 was now home to architectural marvels that seemed to defy physics. The crystalline builders had created cities that existed partially in normal space and partially in higher dimensions, allowing millions of beings to live in areas that appeared to be only a few square kilometers. Vega 2 had become the Federation's center for quantum engineering. The deep swimmers had developed technologies that merged consciousness directly with machinery, creating ships that were as much alive as they were built. And Earth had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a world that was simultaneously one of the most advanced civilizations in known space and one of the most welcoming to visitors from other worlds. Ambassador Ji Hae-yoon had been elected as the Federation's first president, a role that rotated between species every few years, to ensure no single civilization dominated the alliance. "The Federation now includes over 1,200 worlds," she announced during the second annual Federation Assembly. "We've made contact with 47 new civilizations in the past year, and 39 of them have requested membership. The 8 who declined our invitation are welcome to reconsider at any time." Commander Han Sol Kim had returned to Earth to oversee humanity's newest project, the construction of ships designed specifically for intergalactic exploration. The success of the Andromeda missions had inspired plans to explore other galaxies, to seek out new forms of life and intelligence that might exist beyond the local group. "The Infinite Journey Project represents everything the Federation stands for," he explained to a gathering of scientists and engineers from dozens of species. "We're building ships that can travel to other galaxies not to conquer them, but to learn from them. We're seeking out new civilizations not to exploit them, but to befriend them." The ships being built in Earth orbit were marvels of cooperative engineering. Each one incorporated technologies from every major Federation species, creating vessels that were more advanced than anything any single civilization could have built alone. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the former Council species themselves. The Valari had embraced their role as the Federation's premier research civilization, establishing universities throughout the galaxy where beings from hundreds of worlds could study together. Their natural curiosity, no longer constrained by the need to maintain political control, had led to discoveries that revolutionized understanding of physics, biology, and consciousness itself. The Nexans had become the Federation's administrative backbone, but their bureaucracy now served to facilitate cooperation rather than enforce oppression. They had developed systems that could manage the complex logistics of governing a multi-species federation spanning multiple galaxies. Even the Keth had found new purpose. Their warrior culture had evolved into a guardian tradition that protected exploration missions, defended peaceful worlds, and ensured that the Federation's ideals of cooperation and freedom were maintained throughout the galaxy. Captain Nam watched from the bridge of his exploration ship as the first Joint Federation Andromedan research station was completed in the space between galaxies. The station would serve as a meeting point where civilizations from different galaxies could share knowledge and establish peaceful relationships. Long-range sensors are detecting signals from the Triangulum galaxy, his science officer reported. Preliminary analysis suggests at least 12 distinct civilizations, some of which appear to have achieved technologies we haven't encountered before. Set course for Triangulum, Nam ordered. Let's see what new friends we can make. As the New Horizon folded space around itself and disappeared into the cosmic void, Nam reflected on how much had changed since that day when 3 alien ships had landed on Earth expecting to add another primitive world to their empire. The aliens had called humans primitive. They had assumed that any species they hadn't encountered before must be inferior to themselves. They had never imagined that the primitives might have something to teach the galaxy about civilization, cooperation, and the true meaning of strength. Now, less than 3 years later, the galaxy was experiencing its greatest period of peace, prosperity, and exploration in recorded history. Species that had been enemies for centuries were working together on projects that benefited everyone. Worlds that had been kept primitive were developing technologies that surpassed anything their former oppressors had possessed. And humanity, the species that had been dismissed as primitive by galactic standards, had become the catalyst that transformed a galaxy ruled by fear into a federation united by hope. The TSS Leviathan, the ship that had started it all, now served as the Federation's flagship. It led exploration missions to distant galaxies, carrying ambassadors and scientists from hundreds of worlds to make contact with new civilizations. But more importantly, it served as a symbol of what was possible when beings chose cooperation over conquest, when they used their strength to protect rather than exploit, when they sought to understand rather than dominate. The primitives had taught the galaxy that true civilization wasn't about having the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons. It was about using whatever power you had to make the universe a better place for everyone. And the universe, it turned out, was full of primitives, waiting for their chance to show what they could accomplish. 2 years after the formation of the Galactic Federation, Captain Dongwu Nam stood on the bridge of the TSS New Horizon, watching something that would have been impossible under the old Council system. The ship was a joint construction project. The hull was built using Keth metallurgy techniques that made it nearly indestructible. The engines were based on human quantum fold technology, but improved by Valari theoretical physicists. The life support systems used helix biotechnology that could adapt to any species' needs. The navigation systems were designed by the deep swimmers, who had an intuitive understanding of quantum mechanics that surpassed even human scientists. "Captain, we're receiving signals from the Andromeda contact zone," reported his communications officer, a young crystalline builder whose body sparkled with inner light, on screen. The main display showed a star system in the Andromeda galaxy, 2.5 million light-years from Earth. 3 different alien civilizations had made contact there, and all of them were more advanced than anything the Milky Way had ever produced. "The Andromedans are requesting a formal meeting," the communications officer continued. "They want to discuss establishing diplomatic relations with the Federation." Nam smiled. When the old Galactic Council had made first contact with new species, it was always the same story. Show up with overwhelming force, demand tribute, threaten orbital bombardment if refused. The primitives were expected to surrender immediately or be destroyed. The Federation did things differently. "Send our response," Nam ordered. "We're honored by their interest in establishing diplomatic relations. We offer friendship, trade, and cultural exchange, but we respect their right to develop at their own pace and maintain their independence." The reply came back within hours. The Andromedans were confused but pleased. They had been expecting threats and demands. Instead, they were being offered partnership as equals. Back in the Milky Way, the transformation of galactic civilization was accelerating beyond anyone's expectations. Dr. Eugene Park had established research stations throughout Federation space, where scientists from hundreds of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The quantum fold drive that had once been humanity's greatest secret was now being improved by alien physicists who brought completely different perspectives to the technology. "We're achieving breakthroughs every week," she reported during a Federation Council meeting. "The Helix bioengineers have figured out how to make quantum fold drives that grow instead of being built. The crystalline builders are creating navigation systems that exist partially in hyperspace. The deep swimmers have developed fold drives that work by manipulating probability rather than space-time." Engineer So-Min Choi had been promoted to Federation Fleet Commander, overseeing the construction of ships that represented the combined knowledge of dozens of civilizations. The new vessels were works of art as much as they were tools of exploration. "The Harmony-class exploration ships are ready for their first missions," she announced. "Each one carries representatives from at least 20 different species. They're not just exploring new star systems, they're demonstrating what's possible when civilizations work together." War Chief Kexmore had transformed his people's military traditions into something entirely new. The Keth were still warriors, but now they fought to protect rather than conquer. "The Federation Defense Force has eliminated the last of the pirate fleets," he reported with satisfaction. "Turns out that pirates have trouble operating when their former council sponsors are no longer funding them and their target worlds are protected by quantum fold response fleets. But the real changes were happening on individual worlds throughout the galaxy. Rigel 7 had become a center for biological research where species from across the galaxy came to study life in all its forms. The Helix had shared their biotechnology freely, leading to medical breakthroughs that extended lifespans and eliminated diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia. Wolf 359 was now home to architectural marvels that seemed to defy physics. The crystalline builders had created cities that existed partially in normal space and partially in higher dimensions, allowing millions of beings to live in areas that appeared to be only a few square kilometers. Vega 2 had become the Federation's center for quantum engineering. The deep swimmers had developed technologies that merged consciousness directly with machinery, creating ships that were as much alive as they were built, and Earth had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a world that was simultaneously one of the most advanced civilizations in known space and one of the most welcoming to visitors from other worlds. Ambassador Ji Hae-yoon had been elected as the Federation's first president, a role that rotated between species every few years to ensure no single civilization dominated the alliance. The Federation now includes over 1,200 worlds, she announced during the second annual Federation Assembly. We've made contact with 47 new civilizations in the past year, and 39 of them have requested membership. The 8 who declined our invitation are welcome to reconsider at any time. Commander Han Sol Kim had returned to Earth to oversee humanity's newest project, the construction of ships designed specifically for intergalactic exploration. The success of the Andromeda missions had inspired plans to explore other galaxies, to seek out new forms of life and intelligence that might exist beyond the local group. The Infinite Journey Project represents everything the Federation stands for, he explained to a gathering of scientists and engineers from dozens of species. We're building ships that can travel to other galaxies not to conquer them, but to learn from them. We're seeking out new civilizations not to exploit them, but to befriend them. The ships being built in Earth orbit were marvels of cooperative engineering. Each one incorporated technologies from every major Federation species, creating vessels that were more advanced than anything any single civilization could have built alone. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the former Council species themselves. The Valari had embraced their role as the Federation's premier research civilization, establishing universities throughout the galaxy where beings from hundreds of worlds could study together. Their natural curiosity, no longer constrained by the need to maintain political control, had led to discoveries that revolutionized understanding of physics, biology, and consciousness itself. The Nexans had become the Federation's administrative backbone, but their bureaucracy now served to facilitate cooperation rather than enforce oppression. They had developed systems that could manage the complex logistics of governing a multi-species federation spanning multiple galaxies. Even the Keth had found new purpose. Their warrior culture had evolved into a guardian tradition that protected exploration missions, defended peaceful worlds, and ensured that the Federation's ideals of cooperation and freedom were maintained throughout the galaxy. Captain Nam watched from the bridge of his exploration ship as the first joint Federation Andromedan research station was completed in the space between galaxies. The station would serve as a meeting point where civilizations from different galaxies could share knowledge and establish peaceful relationships. Long-range sensors are detecting signals from the Triangulum galaxy, his science officer reported. Preliminary analysis suggests at least 12 distinct civilizations, some of which appear to have achieved technologies we haven't encountered before. Set course for Triangulum, Nam ordered. Let's see what new friends we can make. As the new horizon folded space around itself and disappeared into the cosmic void, Nam reflected on how much had changed since that day when 3 alien ships had landed on Earth expecting to add another primitive world to their empire. The aliens had called humans primitive. They had assumed that any species they hadn't encountered before must be inferior to themselves. They had never imagined that the primitives might have something to teach the galaxy about civilization, cooperation, and the true meaning of strength. Now, less than 3 years later, the galaxy was experiencing its greatest period of peace, prosperity, and exploration in recorded history. Species that had been enemies for centuries were working together on projects that benefited everyone. Worlds that had been kept primitive were developing technologies that surpassed anything their former oppressors had possessed. And humanity, the species that had been dismissed as primitive by galactic standards, had become the catalyst that transformed a galaxy ruled by fear into a federation united by hope. The TSS Leviathan, the ship that had started it all, now served as the Federation's flagship. It led exploration missions to distant galaxies, carrying ambassadors and scientists from hundreds of worlds to make contact with new civilizations. But more importantly, it served as a symbol of what was possible when beings chose cooperation over conquest, when they used their strength to protect rather than exploit, when they sought to understand rather than dominate. The primitives had taught the galaxy that true civilization wasn't about having the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons. It was about using whatever power you had to make the universe a better place for everyone. And the universe, it turned out, was full of primitives waiting for their chance to show what they could accomplish.